Hello, I'm Dr. Tom, and I'd like to welcome you to this Friday's update. And I would like to begin by saying what an incredible week we're having in the Global Information Network. This week started with a great Skype call between Lee Kinney, our Director of Global Expansion, and Blaine Athorn and myself, and Peter and Claudia Kusters. And doing a recap on what happened in Germany and the beauty of that growth and the excited new members and the excited upgrades that happened as a result of that family environment, that being together, that bonding that happened over those 3 days. And it was so enlightening and so enriching for us to discuss new possibilities, for us to look forward into how can we support you, club members, sharing the message of Jinn with other potential club members and other club members. You see, it was such a unique environment in that virtually every level, from affiliate to guest and affiliate, all the way to level 7 members, were present in this environment. And that's the beauty of what's happening around the globe with the Global Information Network. That's the beauty of planning and putting in process a model that will work for others. One of the most interesting comments that they made is that they said that some people who came to that meeting had known about Jinn previously, but they thought Jinn had died. They thought it was over. Well, I'm telling you, it won't be long. Jinn will be celebrating its 10th anniversary. The reality is Jinn is alive and well. The reality is Jinn is growing. The lesson was we have not adequately communicated to masses of people who knew about or even were involved inside Jinn that we're alive and well, that we're growing, that we're adding new members, that we're putting on world-class events. World-class events like Punta Cana, which is coming up in February. For some of the training starts the end of January, first weekend in February. And thank you again for your response. Our registrations are now at over 80% on the room block that we've reserved. I only put this out to you for this purpose. Please, if you're planning on going, make sure you register, save a room. We had to add rooms to the group in Chicago, which we're happy to do. It's just easier to do it in October and November than it is to do it in January. So if you're planning on coming, just make sure you click the tab below and get registered for that event, as well as registering through Jinn for the event itself. The two different items that are happening there. So we're very excited about that. A couple of updates that we're having. Remember I told you when we were transforming from one way in which we communicated on our platform, this is the way in which you can receive information, the way in which you study your different levels, the way in which you access the thousands of hours of world-class materials through all of our webinars. That was goal number one. Well, that information is still being added. Most of that is done. Now the focus moves to the translation. For those of you in France, the translation is being added at the levels, one level at a time, on the Success Mastery course to get that information up and running for you. That's what we're referring to as the second phase of this transition. The other part of that is to work on what we call the back office, where you can see the people you've sponsored and what level they're at and when they upgrade, and you can reach out and communicate and congratulate them on those moves that they're making inside the club. That is what we're referring to as in phase 2. Both of those are included. So thank you for the feedback. Thank you for the communication. We are working diligently on a daily basis to enhance this website, to make your Jinn experience a more robust experience. Speaking of Paris and French, I will be, when many of you watch this, we'll have completed the first day of the practitioner training that's happening Friday and Saturday in Paris. We also have the Sunday class. Again, there'll be a tab here below. The Sunday class of Unlocking Your Power, which will actually be, that's at the very bottom of the landing page that you go to, just as an FYI. Love to come to Paris. I believe this is our 26th year of coming there and sharing this type of information with you so that you can grow, so that you can take away things from that seminar, from that event, from that meeting, from those relationships that you build that can in fact change your family. And you know, we were just in in just outside of Ottawa at the Pat Node Performance Retreat. And Blaine and I have been talking about this because there's still a buzz going on, and we're getting a lot of feedback from members who were there. And I want to tell you that it was so enriching from the perspective, the eye of the perspective of Blaine and Dr. Ted and Dr. Tom, to watch something that just naturally occurred in Ottawa. What just naturally came about as a result of the training that was happening there. Because listen to this, half of the people that were in this group, in this class, were level 7 members, senior officers, which means they get it. They've had this training. And the beauty and the reward for us was to watch how they were implementing that training, how they put that training in motion. How when someone would struggle with a particular exercise, because they were different, they're different movements. I struggled with some of those movements. It's not natural. I don't have any experience in that realm. So I had to begin to create new neural pathways. It was challenging for me to do certain movements. I felt like I had 2 left feet, and sometimes I'd have to stop and look at my hands and think, that's not where that hand is supposed to go. You see, it's the same for all of us. Some of us have had this type of training for a long time. Some of us is brand new. Some of us have trained in martial arts. Some of us haven't. It's a new neural pathway. And the beauty was to watch fellow Gen members embrace those who could use some assistance. Now, here was the real lesson for me. What I observed is that they didn't do it for them. In other words, if someone... I gave this example on an inner circle call this week. When you would go on one of the aerial exercises, sometimes you would come up short of the platform, meaning that you're suspended and you still have to pull yourself along the cable to get to the next place where you can stand up, you can unhook, and then you can rehook to be able to continue through the park, through the stations, if you will. And what happened was that as some people came up short of reaching that next goal, you see, this is what happens in life. Other Gen members on the ground would tell them and coach them and instruct them, if you'll turn around backward. You see, it's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive to turn your back on the target, to turn your back on the goal, to turn your back on your dream. It's counterintuitive to do that, yet it was the easiest way to be able to reach over your head and grab the cable and pull yourself. So to be able to accomplish the end result, which was to get to the platform, you had to do something that you were uncomfortable. You had to do something you couldn't see with your eyes. Remember, we've learned the eyes deceive us. They're not the end-all, be-all sense. There are other senses that can get you there. By using touch, by using that feel, by listening to the auditory commands coming from sometimes 20 or 30 feet below you. You see, they didn't throw them a rope and pull them up there. They didn't make them get to the platform. They merely told them a better way. They merely instructed them. They suggested to them there was a way that seems odd, yet it is the solution you're looking for. How many times has that happened to you in life? How many times has it happened where you thought that there should be a better way? Well, there is a better way. There's a better way for growth, a way in which you can accomplish your dreams and desires and goals, a way in which people have blazed a trail before you. Listen to the materials. The coaching will help you. Another example, while I was on this property, understand that I understand the farms and property. I grew up on one, and I understand when Jock and Linda began to plant trees, and Stefan told us they'd planted thousands of trees when they were just little kids, thousands and thousands of trees on this property. Well, I saw a particular tree right next to where we were doing an exercise, where we'd taken our shoes off and taken our socks off, and we're standing on Mother Earth. We reconnected. It was a beautiful exercise. Beautiful exercise. And I looked over, and there was an apple tree there. An apple tree that at this time of year apples are ripe, and so some would fall on the ground, and some were run over by the four-wheeler or a lawnmower, some were stepped on by people, and each day more apples would fall out of the tree. And I began to, it triggered a memory engram in me that reminded me of when I was a boy. My father would get literally trailer loads of apples from patients that he had, organically grown apples, and he would bring them to the house, and he bought a press, an apple press, which is a big contraption that has a big screw-like lever in the middle of it that you would turn. You'd crush the apples, you'd put them in this bin, and you'd begin to put pressure on them and squeeze them until the juice would come out. And we would save that juice and put it into gallon jugs and freeze it, and we would consume that juice from one year to the next. We had an entire dedicated freezer for that. And I tell you this story because of the nutrition that was in the apple. It's what we raised our children. That's what they drank at home. It was apple juice. It wasn't soft drinks. It wasn't the energy drinks. It wasn't all of the caffeinated stuff that's out there now. This was raw, frozen, raw, organically squeezed apple juice. Well, you had to know just how much pressure, just how much torque, because eventually it would be too hard for you to do, and you'd put a bar across it to get leverage to increase the pressure. However, if you did too much pressure, it would squirt the parts of the apple back out at you, and you'd have to filter the stuff. So there was just the right amount of pressure that you could apply to this press to get the apple juice. And so as I was looking at this tree and I saw this apple that just, this apple fell, and I thought, there is no way that my dad would walk by that apple without tasting an apple from Canada. And so I went over and I picked up that apple and I kind of brushed it off on my sleeve and shined it up a little bit. And I'll tell you, it wasn't the most beautiful apple I'd ever seen, as most organic apples aren't. You see, it's not the pretty, it's not the beauty of the apple in the supermarket, it's the nutrition that's in the apple. Well, this apple was incredibly sweet and incredibly juicy, and it popped. When you know how when you bite a good apple and you just hear that crunch and you know something really good is coming your way? Well, that's exactly what happened in this instance. And in that moment, it took me back to those times I spent with my father. And as you know, when you have parents or loved ones that have passed, oftentimes they communicate with you, or you have that feeling like so-and-so was speaking to me, or I felt their presence in the room. It's not a unique experience to me. It's only unique unless you're paying attention, and then it happens for you too. So I invite you to pay attention. Well, the story has one more chapter to it, and that is we have a thing in our family that, well, when our mother was transitioning, when we were all gathered around her in a hospital room, and a ladybug came, and it was a tough moment. It was a tough time. It was a really hard place for our family in that moment. And as we looked out the window, a ladybug came up and flew onto the glass. And that ladybug stayed there all day. And that ladybug would crawl around, and you'd go back over and you'd go back to the window, and that ladybug was still there. And so for the years since then, we have a connection with ladybugs, and they show up in the strangest times when we're having family gatherings, and it's a story for another day. The number of times these ladybugs will show up at just the right time. Well, while I'm eating this apple, remember, here's the setting. I'm eating this apple, thinking of my father and the childhood and nutrition and nourishing and watching people grow around me on a family environment of the Patnodes with all of the children and the grandchildren coming in and out. I mean, it is a beautiful setup. And I look over to the tree, and guess what's on a branch of that tree? None other than a ladybug. And in that moment, I knew the presence was there. It's that presence that guides you. It's that presence you learn to listen to. It's that presence we talk about in doing masterminds. It's that presence in how you can include people in a mastermind even if they're not physically with you or if they have transitioned. It's one of the teachings of Jen. Well, my mom loved to party. She wasn't a big partier, but she loved to party. She loved being in the environment of other people, laughing and learning and smiling. And she wouldn't miss that for anything. And sure enough, there it was, right there in Ottawa. Well, as I looked at the tree, there were a number of other ladybugs that showed up. And it was a very touching moment for me, and a moment that I'll cherish forever. And even to the point that I stopped and took pictures to show you what this was like for me. I don't know what the times are in your life. I don't know what the signals are. I don't know when it happens for you. I just hope that it happens for you. That you connect to the areas of the planet that you come from, that you connect with other people. This particular event was attended by people who were sharing anniversaries. It was celebrations of birthdays. People made this a special occasion to say, let's do that for our anniversary. I'm going to do that for my birthday. Somebody's going to give me that as a gift for my birthday. And I share that with you because that's how important it is to some upper level members of this club. That's how important it is to share, to give that gift of knowledge, to give that gift of growth. We're headed into that holiday season, that giving season, that gift season. Who can you share with? Who can you award a gift to that will add to their knowledge, that will add to their growth, that's something that has purpose and meaning for a lifetime? How can we give more? Because it is a true law that the more you give, the more you get. The more you give, the more you get. And the more you give, it puts you in the feeling of giving, and it gives you that satisfaction and that internal love and that little smile on your face to know you've done something good for someone, whether it's you or someone else. It's sharing, it's giving. That's the beauty of this club. It's one of the lessons that we learn. It's been my pleasure to share stories with you today on this Friday update, and that will conclude our Friday update for October the 12th, 2018. I hope you have a spectacular week, and I look forward to speaking with you next week. I'm Dr. Tom.